The bus doors hissed open, releasing a gust of stale air into the cold Virginia morning. Emma Cole stepped down onto the cracked pavement outside the Naval Special Operations Training Facility, gripping a worn canvas duffel in one hand and a thin folder of paperwork in the other. She paused, taking in the sprawling complex ahead, squat concrete buildings, obstacle courses lined with rope and steel, the distant glint of water where the bay met the horizon. At 32, she looked out of place among the eager young arrivals. Her auburn hair was tied back in a plain braid, her face free of makeup, her clothing unremarkable, a gray sweater, dark jeans, and scuffed boots. She could have passed for a schoolteacher, a librarian, or anyone but someone walking willingly into one of the most punishing military selection programs in the country. Around her, other candidates carried themselves like living recruitment posters, sharp uniforms, squared shoulders, chiseled physiques. Their gear was immaculate, their confidence radiating in easy banter. These were men and women who had survived years in conventional units, carrying glowing recommendations from commanders who would stake their reputations on them. Emma moved with quiet efficiency toward the registration table. She didn't rush, but every motion was deliberate, precise. When she handed over her paperwork, the young petty officer behind the desk frowned slightly, scanning the pages. "This is unusual," he murmured, flipping through the file. Most candidate packets bulged with service records, fitness scores, commendations. Emma's was slim, much of it hidden behind thick blocks of redaction. There were references to programs the clerk had never heard of, stamped and signed by authorities above his pay grade. "Ma'am," he said cautiously, "it seems there's some." "The documentation is complete," Emma interrupted gently, her voice low yet oddly weighted. "If there are questions, they can be directed to the program administrator." The petty officer hesitated, then nodded and typed her name into the roster. A minute later, she had a bunk assignment and a bundle of standard-issue training gear. As she walked away, he noticed a small note clipped to her file, a reminder that her background was classified at a level far beyond his clearance. Her assigned barracks bay housed 7 other women, all handpicked from their respective branches. The air was thick with the scent of boot polish and laundry detergent. Emma set her bag on an empty bunk, feeling the sideways glances from her new roommates. The bunk beside hers belonged to Staff Sergeant Sophia Kane, a 26-year-old Marine with a chest full of ribbons and forearms like steel beams. Sophia had 3 combat tours under her belt and a reputation for crushing anyone foolish enough to challenge her. "So," Sophia drawled, leaning back on her hands, "what's your story, sweetheart? Which general's niece are you?" Emma kept folding her spare clothes, stacking them with meticulous care. "I'm here for the same reason you are," she said evenly. Sophia chuckled, a humorless sound. "Sure you are. And I'm here for the spa treatment. This isn't summer camp, lady. People wash out before the first week's over. You look like you'd struggle opening a pickle jar." The other women pretended not to listen, but their ears were tilted toward the conversation. This was an early test. How Emma responded would set her place in the pecking order. "I appreciate your concern," Emma replied, voice calm, not sarcastic. "I'm sure your experience will be valuable during training." It wasn't a counterattack, nor was it submission. Sophia's smirk faltered for a fraction of a second. Most folded under her intimidation, or they snapped back. This was something else. From 2 bunks over, Private Rachel Hart, a compact, muscular Army Ranger with pale hair and sharp eyes, joined in. "So, what unit were you with? Gotta have serious credentials to even be here." Emma zipped her duffel and sat on the edge of her bed. "I've served in various capacities," she said, tone still neutral. "The specifics aren't something I can discuss." The answer was professional, yet infuriatingly vague. Rachel glanced at Sophia, and both wore the same expression. The newcomer was hiding something. From the doorway, Michael Torres, a Navy explosive specialist, leaned in with folded arms. "I think someone pulled strings to get you here," he said flatly. "This is for operators, not office clerks who want an adventure story to tell later." Emma's gaze flicked to him, assessing without emotion, like measuring the wind before taking a shot. "Your skepticism is noted," she said. "Time will tell whether I belong here." With that, she stood and began making her bed, Hospital corners tight enough to bounce a coin. Blanket perfectly smooth. Pillow placed by regulation. She moved like someone who'd done it hundreds of times before. By evening, the candidates assembled in the main hall for their first briefing. Emma chose a seat near the back, pen poised over a small notebook. While others traded war stories and names of shared commanders, she listened without comment, her pen scratching in shorthand too small to read. The instructors laid out the rules, the standards, the consequences of failure. Emma absorbed every word, jotting notes without once glancing around. When the briefing ended, candidates drifted back toward their quarters, laughing, arguing, speculating about who would be the first to wash out. Emma trailed behind the group, walking through the dimming light, aware of eyes following her. Tomorrow, the real training would begin. What none of them knew, and what Emma could never say, was that she'd already endured programs that made this one look like a fitness class. The faint scars hidden under her clothing were souvenirs from operations that didn't officially exist, where the penalty for failure was far worse than embarrassment. For now, she was just another name on the roster, another hopeful, another target for judgment. But Emma Cole had learned long ago that the most dangerous person in any room was often the one no one saw coming. As she lay in her bunk that night, surrounded by women who had already decided she didn't belong, she allowed herself the faintest of smiles. They had no idea what they were dealing with. The alarm ripped through the darkness at 0500, but Emma was already awake, lying still with her eyes open. Years ago, she trained her body to beat any clock. On missions, an extra second could be the difference between life and death. Around her, groans rose from the bunks. Boots hit the floor. Uniforms rustled. She dressed quickly in the loose-fitting PT gear, the fabric hanging from her smaller frame. Some of the women noticed her readiness, but read it wrong. Nerves, they thought, not discipline. Sophia Kane rolled out of bed like a force of nature, muscles flexing under the gray shirt. She glanced at Emma, with a smirk sharp enough to cut glass. "Hope you've been working out, princess. Today's where we separate the players from the pretenders." Outside, the air was cold enough to bite. Instructors waited like stone statues, clipboards in hand. Lieutenant Daniel Reeve, the group's primary trainer, moved down the line with eyes that missed nothing. He was a man who'd built a career finding cracks in armor, physical and psychological. The first test was a 2-mile run in full gear, followed by an obstacle course designed to grind down even the strongest. When the whistle blew, the formation surged forward. Some candidates took off like sprinters, eager to prove themselves. Emma settled into a steady, unremarkable pace, breathing even, eyes forward. She wasn't trying to win the run. She was watching, measuring, letting the rhythm of movement reveal weaknesses in the group. Rachel Hart, a few strides ahead, kept glancing back, expecting Emma to fade. But Emma stayed exactly where she was, neither gaining nor losing ground. Her stride was efficient, economical. She looked more like someone on a morning jog than a competitor in one of the most grueling programs in the country. Michael Torres ran nearby, sweat already streaking his face. "She's probably been training for months, just for this," Rachel muttered to him. "Maybe even hired a personal coach." Michael just grunted, too busy keeping pace to argue. Emma crossed the finish line in the middle of the pack, not remarkable, not lagging. But she wasn't even winded. She rolled her shoulders once, then joined the others at the obstacle course. Here, the program stopped pretending to be friendly. Cargo nets, rope climbs, heavy walls slick with frost, every station was a chance to fail. Emma moved deliberately. She watched others first, noting their techniques, mistakes, and shortcuts. When it was her turn, she executed with quiet precision. On the rope climb, she hooked her legs just so, conserving arm strength while gaining ground quickly. On the wall, she used leverage and momentum instead of brute force. She never wasted energy. From the sidelines, Sophia watched with a tightening jaw. "Show off," she muttered, though she knew the technique was sound. During breaks, while others collapsed on the grass, Emma pulled out her small notebook and wrote quickly, head bent. She kept the pages tilted away from curious eyes. Rachel nudged Sophia. "What is she even writing? Looks like a science project." "Doesn't matter," Sophia replied. "It's not normal." Lieutenant Reeve had noticed the notebook too. He'd been expecting Emma to crack, but instead he saw a calmness that didn't fit the profile of a civilian walking into elite training. She wasn't just surviving, she was analyzing. The afternoon exercise was a tactical movement drill. The candidates had to navigate a wooded area without being spotted by instructors posing as enemy patrols. Most approached it like a game of hide and seek, sticking to obvious cover and predictable paths. Emma didn't. She read the terrain like a book, the rise and fall of the ground, the angles of sight, the shadows that shifted with the sun. She moved in bursts, minimizing her exposure, always breaking her outline before anyone could focus on her. When she reached the target flag, she had not been seen once. Reeve stood waiting at the objective, arms folded. "Where'd you learn to move like that?" he asked, no preamble. Emma's answer was as polished as a coin. "Various courses, sir. Nothing that isn't public record." It was true, in the most misleading way possible. By evening, whispers had spread like wildfire. The quiet woman in gray wasn't just keeping up. She was doing things seasoned operators found difficult. Sophia, Rachel, and Michael sat together in the mess hall, their trays untouched. "Something's off," Sophia said, stabbing her fork into a piece of bread. "Nobody moves like that without serious training. And if she had it, it'd be in her file." Rachel nodded. "That rope climb, that's not gym stuff. That's military technique. Advanced military technique." Michael hesitated. "Maybe she's a washout from a special unit. Got dropped for something." It was a theory they could all live with, one that kept Emma outside the circle. Across the hall, Emma sat alone, her notebook open beside her tray. She wrote without hurry, flipping pages with one hand, eating slowly with the other. Her notes weren't about herself. They were about the training, where it was effective, where it was predictable, where it fell short of preparing someone for real-world threats. The obstacle course tested endurance, but ignored the reality of heavy gear in hostile terrain. The stealth drill was solid for basics, but ignored thermal imaging or electronic surveillance. Emma had trained in places where those oversights got people killed. She closed her notebook, slid it into her pack, and rose without looking at anyone. As the night closed in and the barracks lights went out, the air between bunks was heavy with speculation. By the time the next morning came, speculation would begin hardening into hostility. By the second week, Sophia Kane had turned her dislike of Emma Cole into a mission. What began as mocking remarks and pointed questions became something sharper, a campaign to prove Emma didn't belong. Sophia had always trusted her instincts. In the Marines, they'd kept her alive and helped her spot weak links before they endangered anyone else. And her instincts told her Emma was a fraud, prepared for the basics but incapable of handling the reality of elite operations. What irritated Sophia most wasn't that Emma had survived the first week. It was that she'd done it without fanfare, without cracking, without looking tired. The mystery was infuriating. During morning coffee in the mess tent, Sophia leaned over to Rachel Hart and Michael Torres. "She's good. I'll give her that. But being ready for tests isn't the same as being qualified. Anyone can train for something they know is coming." Michael smirked. "And the way she writes in that notebook? Looks like she's logging the whole program for a book deal. Real operators don't have time for homework." Rachel tilted her head. "What if she's here to steal training methods? Private security companies pay for that kind of intel." The idea stuck. By the time they walked to the training field, the three of them had quietly agreed that Emma wasn't just unqualified. She was dangerous in the wrong way. That afternoon, the group was scheduled for hand-to-hand combat drills. Lieutenant Daniel Reeve asked for a volunteer to demonstrate a few techniques with him. Before anyone could move, Sophia stepped forward. "Sir, I'll partner with Cole," she said, voice smooth but eyes sharp. Reeve raised a brow, but he'd been wondering how Emma would handle direct confrontation. "All right, on the mat." The circle formed fast. Everyone knew this was more than a demonstration, it was a test. Emma stepped onto the mat without hesitation, her expression unreadable. She studied Sophia the way a chess player studies an opponent before the first move, noting weight distribution, the slight shift of her stance, the preference for the right hand. Reeve gave the signal. Sophia lunged, throwing a combination designed to overwhelm quickly. Her punches were fast, heavy, confident, the kind of aggression that usually forced smaller opponents onto the defensive. Emma didn't block in the conventional sense. She shifted just enough to let the first punch pass, redirected the second with a twist of her wrist, and used Sophia's own momentum to break her balance. One precise strike landed against a pressure point on Sophia's arm, not enough to injure, but enough to send a ripple of surprise through her. Instead of pressing the advantage, Emma stepped back, resetting her stance. Lucky, Sophia muttered, circling. The second exchange was worse for her. She tried a grappling maneuver meant to bring Emma down by sheer weight, but Emma moved like water around the attack. In seconds, she was behind Sophia, in position for a choke hold that could have ended the fight. Again, she released instead of finishing. Reeve called a stop. His face revealed nothing, but his eyes tracked Emma longer than they tracked Sophia. Good control. Both of you. The crowd dispersed slowly, whispering. Sophia's jaw was tight, her ears hot with the knowledge that everyone had seen her outclassed. By that evening, the whispers had hardened into theories. No one fights like that without serious training, Michael insisted as they gathered in an unused storage bay. And if it's not in her file, someone's hiding it. Rachel crossed her arms. What if she's here to evaluate us? Like some covert tester for the brass. The idea unsettled them more than they admitted. If Emma was reporting on their performance, every word, every failure, every careless moment could end up in a file on a commander's desk. Then we expose her before she exposes us, Sophia said. Force her into something she can't fake. If she's really qualified, she'll pass. If not, we'll see the cracks. They began to plan. The next large-scale field exercise would be the perfect opportunity. They'd control her role, set her up for failure, and document the result. What none of them realized was that Emma had read their intentions days ago. In her notebook, the same one they speculated about endlessly, she had already outlined each of them in meticulous detail. Sophia's tendency toward pride-driven decisions, Michael's need to prove himself through risk-taking, Rachel's loyalty to stronger personalities when under pressure. She'd seen the arc before, skepticism turning to open hostility, suspicion becoming conspiracy. The difference here was that she couldn't simply eliminate the threat the way she might in another environment. This was a control program, and her mission required her to remain within its parameters. She would have to let them make their move, and then decide how to respond without blowing her cover. That night, the bay lights flicked off one by one, and the barracks went still. Emma lay on her bunk, listening to the rhythm of breathing around her. Somewhere down the hall, footsteps echoed. The air smelled faintly of detergent and the salt wind from the bay. She knew the coming days would be different. The first week had been observation. The second would be a test, not from the instructors, but from her peers. In the darkness, she smiled faintly. She'd passed harder tests before. The third week began with a crack of intensity that split the group in two. Those who were merely surviving, and those who were thriving. Only 43 candidates remained, their bodies leaner, movements sharper, eyes more calculating. It was the perfect time for Sophia Kane's plan to unfold. The upcoming 2-day field exercise would test navigation, reconnaissance, and endurance under simulated enemy pressure. Small teams were assigned overlapping objectives, each requiring precision and coordination. Sophia had used her influence to ensure Emma Cole landed on her team, alongside Michael Torres, Rachel Hart, and 2 other recruits willing to play along. Their mission was straightforward on paper: navigate 15 miles through woodland, gather intelligence from 3 objectives, and reach the extraction point within the time limit. What the mission briefing didn't include were the private discussions Sophia had arranged the night before, how they'd quietly tilt the exercise against Emma without making it look deliberate. When the team gathered at the start point, Sophia announced, "Cole, you're navigating." Emma accepted the role with a simple nod. She studied the issued map and compass, her eyes narrowing slightly as she noticed the compass needle drifting off true. She gave it a half-turn, tested again, and confirmed the fault. A deliberate fault. Michael Torres was watching her carefully, expecting confusion. "Problem?" he asked, feigning innocence. Emma's reply was calm, almost polite. "Issued compass is off. I'll use my own." She reached into her vest, and pulled out a personal static model, its casing scratched from years of use. Sophia's jaw tightened. Strike one had failed. They set out, moving through the damp undergrowth in a staggered column. The winter wind hissed through the pines, carrying the faint metallic scent of their gear. Emma's pace was steady, quick enough to make time but slow enough to preserve energy. Halfway to the first objective, the second plan unfolded. Rachel, assigned to rear security, began lagging, letting gaps open in the formation. Twice, Sophia had to call for her to close distance, and each time Rachel shot Emma a look as if it were her fault. Finally, Emma halted the group and crouched low. "We have a spacing problem," she said in a low, even voice. "We're too strung out. That invites ambush." Rachel bristled. "Maybe if you weren't setting such a brutal pace." Emma didn't raise her voice. "Adjusting formation isn't about speed. It's about discipline." She reassigned positions, placing Rachel in the middle and giving clear instructions for spacing. The other two recruits nodded without protest, leaving Rachel no choice but to comply. Sophia could feel the control of the moment slipping from her fingers. Emma wasn't rattled. She was running the team like it was her job. At the first objective, they were tasked with observing an enemy commander, an instructor acting the role without being detected. It required stealth, patience, and absolute silence. Michael, crouched beside Emma, let his training rifle slip. The clatter of a blank round discharging shattered the stillness. Birds exploded from the trees. The commander glanced their way, and the objective was blown. "Mission failed," Sophia announced with thinly veiled satisfaction. But Emma simply tapped the map. "The exercise doesn't say we have to observe from the designated point. It says we have to gather intelligence. That's still possible." In minutes, she'd reworked the plan, shifting to a secondary observation position uphill, out of the enemy's line of sight. She coordinated movement using bird calls and timed gestures, making sure each person knew their part. It worked flawlessly. They gathered the needed intel and exfiltrated without a trace. When they regrouped, one of the other recruits whispered to Michael, "She just turned a total failure into a win." By nightfall, Sophia's frustration had hardened into anger. Every attempt to make Emma falter had only proven her adaptability. Even more infuriating, she wasn't doing it with bravado or smugness. She was simply competent. Unshakably so. The next day's objective involved securing a mock supply cache deep in the woods. Sophia decided on a final, more direct strike. She'd assign Emma to lead an approach through deliberately bad terrain, thick with brambles, ankle-deep mud, and low visibility. The hope was to slow her down, cause an injury, or at least burn so much time they'd fail the time limit. "Cole, you're on point," Sophia said, handing over the map. Emma studied it for 2 seconds, then shifted course 30 degrees. "That's not the route I marked," Sophia said sharply. "It's the one that gets us there fastest without losing people to twisted ankles," Emma replied evenly. "Your route costs us 40 minutes in unnecessary obstacles." She didn't wait for approval. She started moving, and grudgingly, the team followed. By the time they reached the cache, they had enough time to spare that Emma added a secondary recon sweep, gathering bonus intel that would boost their overall score. When they returned to base, Sophia's expression was carved from stone. She couldn't argue with the results, but the results were destroying the narrative she'd built about Emma being unfit. That night in the barracks, Sophia sat on her bunk, watching Emma write in that ever-present notebook. The pen moved in quick, precise strokes, as if every observation was being locked into place for later. Sophia finally asked, "What exactly are you writing in there?" Emma looked up, face calm. "Training observations." "For who?" "For continuous improvement," Emma said, closing the book and tucking it away. "Different units have different practices." It was polite on the surface, but the underlying meaning was clear. Your experience isn't the whole map. Sophia turned away, feeling something she wasn't used to, the creeping edge of doubt. The morning of day 21 was hot and heavy with humidity, the kind that clung to skin like a damp blanket. The air inside the compound felt electric. It was evaluation day. Lieutenant Daniel Reeve stood before the 38 candidates who had made it this far. Behind him, a line of unfamiliar senior officers watched silently. Their presence was unsettling. These weren't the usual evaluators. Today's operation will combine everything you've learned, Reeve announced. Infiltration, intelligence gathering, hostage recovery, and extraction under fire. Teams will be assessed on both results and individual performance. When the assignments were posted, Emma Cole saw her name slotted into Team Alpha, led by none other than Sophia Kane, with Michael Torres and Rachel Hart beside her. The combination was no accident. Someone wanted to see what would happen when you put the most hostile teammates together under maximum pressure. Sophia's eyes glittered with satisfaction as they gathered for planning. All right, here's the plan. Fast and hard at the main entrance. Overwhelm them before they can respond. Emma studied the compound map spread across the table. The primary entrance was a kill zone, funneling attackers straight into overlapping fields of fire. That approach will get us all taken out before we hit the first checkpoint, she said plainly. Sophia leaned forward. Got a better idea, Princess? Yes. We create a diversion at the main gate, while the real team moves in from the secondary access. We use their defenses against them. Rachel snorted. Too complicated. Simple works best. Simple works when you have overwhelming numbers, Emma said, eyes steady. We don't. The conversation devolved quickly, with Sophia shooting down every suggestion Emma made. When the whistle blew for mission start, Sophia didn't hesitate. She ordered the frontal assault. The result was exactly as Emma predicted. They were killed by defensive fire within 50 meters. Now they had to finish the mission with simulated casualties, their strength halved. Sophia's jaw was tight, but she wasn't done. New plan, she said coldly. Cole, you're taking point on the next assault. Solo entry. We'll cover from here. Michael looked uneasy. Even Rachel shifted uncomfortably. This was a death sentence disguised as an order. Emma studied the compound one more time. Understood. Give me 30 seconds to plan a route. No, Sophia snapped. No planning. No notebook. Go now with what you've got. Emma's hands moved automatically, checking gear. Acknowledged. Beginning approach in 30 seconds. There was no fear in her voice, no hesitation. If anything, there was focus, the kind that belonged to someone stepping into their element. When she moved, it was like watching water vanish into sand. One moment she was at the tree line, the next she was gone. The evaluators leaned forward, scanning their monitors as if they'd lost her. Inside the compound, things started breaking, not physically, but operationally. Cameras went dark. Radios crackled with static. Guards abandoned posts to investigate phantom disturbances. It was chaos, unfolding so subtly that the defending team didn't realize they were being manipulated. From Overwatch, Michael whispered, "How is she doing that?" "She's ghost walking," Sophia murmured before she could stop herself. Her tone held something new, not mockery, but awe. 18 minutes later, Emma emerged from the far side of the compound with the hostage slung over her shoulder, gear intact, uniform regulation perfect, breathing steady. She looked like she'd just taken a brisk walk. She set the hostage down in front of Sophia. Objective complete. All intel gathered. No friendly losses. Any further tasking? Before Sophia could answer, Lieutenant Reeves' voice came over the radio. Team Alpha, hold position. Do not return to base until further instructed. Minutes later, a convoy rolled in. Out stepped Master Chief Robert Hale, a man with 30 years in special operations, his presence radiating the kind of authority that made entire rooms straighten their backs. Beside him was Captain Jonathan Pierce, commander of the entire training facility. The candidates formed up instinctively. Hale's eyes swept the team before settling on Emma. "Candidate Cole," he said, his voice level but carrying weight. "Your performance today has raised questions that require immediate answers." Sophia broke rank. "Sir, she's been acting suspicious since day one. The way she writes notes, the way she moves, nothing matches her record." Hale turned his gaze on Sophia, and the air seemed to thin. "Sergeant Kane, you are not authorized to assess operational capabilities outside your chain of command. Your conduct toward this candidate is already under review." Sophia's mouth shut with an audible click. Hale faced Emma again. "Are you operating under direct executive authority?" Emma's expression didn't change. Sir, I am not authorized to discuss my assignment without proper clearance protocols. That was not a denial, and every seasoned operator there knew it. Hale nodded once. Understood. Verification is in process. He returned a minute later with a secure device. After a coded conversation on an encrypted channel, he said, "Provide proof." Emma removed her tactical vest and outer shirt, turning so the sunlight struck the intricate tattoo along her spine, an eagle and shield entwined with symbols that only a handful of people in the world could recognize. Hale's breath caught. Even Captain Pierce paled. This wasn't just any presidential service mark. The additional symbols indicated participation in operations so classified that even Hale didn't have clearance for the details. Around them, silence pressed like a weight. Michael and Rachel stared, the realization settling in like ice water. They hadn't been undermining an unqualified recruit. They'd been interfering with someone who outranked their entire chain of command in ways they couldn't begin to understand. Pierce stepped forward. "Ma'am, I apologize for any inappropriate treatment you've received." "No apology necessary, Captain," Emma said, pulling her shirt back on. "The assignment was to evaluate training protocols. All variables have been observed." It clicked for everyone at once. She had been sent here not to earn a place, but to judge whether they were fit for theirs. Hale's voice cut the tension. "Kane, Torres, Hart, effective immediately. You are relieved from this program, pending formal review of your conduct. Your security clearances are suspended. You will not discuss this incident with anyone without authorization." Sophia's face drained of color. "Sir, we didn't know." "You didn't know," Hale interrupted, "because you assumed competence only looks one way. That failure in judgment disqualifies you from special operations." No one spoke. Emma took out her notebook and began writing. Each word a final record of what she'd seen over the past 3 weeks. Every choice, every failure, every moment of leadership or its absence. When she finished, she closed the book. "Report will be submitted within 48 hours. Hale nodded. Dismissed Operative Cole. Emma walked past Sophia, Michael, and Rachel without a glance. The training field felt smaller as she left, yet somehow sharper, as if everyone standing there now understood that the quiet woman in gray had been the most dangerous person in the room from the start. And she always would be.